things started here, Prashant. I think let's start with something a little bit what at least many of us consider taboo, right? And probably investors also consider taboo, religion, right? Why, why that space? What got you excited? And how do you build a business on a space where people have sort of kept away from for a long time? And
Thank you. I would not agree that people have kept away from that. Many people have tried devotion as space. I think the timing is right now. I'll quickly give my comment on why exactly we are doing now. Over the last 1 decade, if you realize, right, all of the key behaviors that are essential to human beings have moved online. It is, to me, it is about time that devotion and services around devotion will move online. For me, a major motivation to be able to do this was because of my own background. I was running a company before this which was called Trail, and I was moving on from there in early 2020. I was thinking about what are the key behaviors that are there as part of human beings which haven't really moved online as yet. And I ran a few experiments. I was evaluating many categories at that point in time. One experiment I ran was around devotion, and to me it was the user love that experiment received that brought me to a point that if I can put together best product builders, engineers, designers to be able to solve for this particular space, which hasn't really got that trust or love from the creators, that will be an interesting starting point. When I initiated in this journey, I realized that hey, it might look like a beautiful pond which has a lot of greenery around it. As I'm approaching towards it, it looks like a very large ocean. Now coming to the point, how do you monetize? I think the problem with devotion as space has been that everyone has looked at the user and said that hey, it's a golden goose. Let us cut it the way when they come into your system. So the people have overly indexed on using fear for getting people to transact. However, our philosophy was different. We said that hey, at Sri Mandir, the app that we have built, the idea was to solve for trust first. And we realized that the people in their offline world spend in certain patterns. And throughout a year, there are different kind of spend that people would do. Now, if I were to build a transaction first platform for all of these needs, it will not make sense because many of them would be small ticket size, large ticket size and so on. These are low frequency, mid frequency use cases. So I said the first thing would be to build a trusted engagement layer where people would come and engage here, and then over the course of their engagement on this particular platform, can I give them contextual value propositions on which they will transact. And that's how we have gone about building this. Today the platform has around 3 million people who use it on a monthly basis. Around 100,000 people use the services that we offer to them.
Got it.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Great. No, it's we'll come back to some of the thoughts on how you're going to convert the typically an offline behavior to online in a bit. But Chaitanya, probably I'll probe this point around the overall space with you as well, right? When you are looking at sleep solutions, mattresses, there have been these legacy guys whom we all have trusted, our parents have trusted. They had their value, the entire value chain built out, their retail distribution built out. Why start there? What insight led you to sort of look at that or look at Wakefit to start something in that space at all?
Frankly, there was no insight. So I was a failed entrepreneur twice over. My co-founder had failed once, and we both met up at another Sequoia-funded startup. That's where we became friends, and despite the age gap, we became friends because of the same thing. Was we had studied something, worked somewhere, then failed at something spectacularly, and because we had run out of savings, we joined that place. So, and by that time I had read Eric Ries, Paul Graham's essays, Lean Startup.
I'm sure on the mattress.
On the mattress, pretty much everything. But when this idea came for Wakefit, and for my first two startups, I had tried focus groups, in-depth interviews, consumer silent observations, all of those. But always the key realization was what the consumer says and what the consumer does are vastly different. So this time we said, I know all of the theory, I know all of the failed experiments. So the one thing that I'm going to do is to survive, like Naveen said. So our first PMF milestone was, can Ankit take the salary and survive? Because he was just getting married then. Our second PMF milestone was, can we onboard 2-3 laborers and get started with our team First employees were, Ankit's cook was the first employee for us. We converted him. We sold, we took him in the car, showed the space and said convert. We got our first employee, Ankit and his flatmates lost their cook. But from there...
Was the employee also the first customer and you forced him to buy your first mattress? That would be...
I wish that was that easy. So when we started this, there was no insight. We just said, I don't know if you've seen that movie, The Martian, where he says he's stuck on the planet Mars and he says, solve the first problem, the second problem, the third problem. If you solve enough problems, you get back home to Earth. So our journey was exactly like that. We didn't have a major insight that was a light bulb moment. We didn't have one clear PMF milestone that said, oh my God, we have succeeded. There was very, very, very slow and organic, steady success metrics. And every morning we would wake up to see one customer review which would say that I loved it, my kid is sleeping well, or my arthritic parent, their knee pain is better. And we said, okay, something is going right, so let's continue on this path. So that's how we started, and from there we expanded. Again, we listened to consumers. So from mattresses expanded into bed linen and accessories, and about 3.5 years ago entered furniture. And today we are across all of these three categories, and complete home is our sort of span.
Got it. Sorry, just a quick question on that. And I think Naveen also alluded to some of these. Was expanding to other categories a necessity for you? Or was it something that you by design had thought of on day one?
100% it was by necessity. In India, Naveen mentioned that at 50 million you may still not have PMF. I think India, it's very easy to confuse size of the category with PMF. Size of what you have achieved with PMF.
Got it.
So we feel that every 18 months or 24 months for us to fast growing startup, you need to do PMF expansion. Whether it is going deeper in the same category through separate means or adding new categories. Otherwise, if we had just been mattress, I don't think we would have reached today's scale of 1,000 crore of net revenue, 40 cities, all of that. It wouldn't have been possible.
Got it.
We had to.
TCM, there probably I want you to come in. You were the one who sort of backed Piyush early on in the journey. He had multiple products that he was catering to as, let's put it in the larger space of accessories. You almost told him to just shut down all the other things and get him to focus, and probably that was the board's call. And probably here we have another a founder who said the other aspect, other side of that coin, right? How does an investor look at a diversified portfolio? How would this sharpness and focus on one particular product line, one particular service segment do well for budding entrepreneurs here in the hall, vis-a-vis going a little bit more wider and catering to a larger, say, AOV value, if I can use that word?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So, it depends on what you are solving for, and in terms of what's the margin pool you are playing with. Then the question about the AOV and other things follow. And while we had 4 cards at a point in time, in Lenskart, they went on TV for Lenskart. I think it is August 2013 or something like that. And in 1 month, right, their revenue changed by 80% when we went online. We realized that this is such a latent demand, and this is a batch size of 1, which is not very easy for an Amazon to crack. A bags cart or watch cart, which is category management, can very easily be challenged by somebody with a lot of money. So where do you have a defendable moat? Double down on that and create, right? And it was not easy for Piyush. So we suggested, but I think kudos to Piyush that, he actually took that decision. For an entrepreneur to take a decision of something where he had conviction in. And if you ask him today, he said that, look, that's such a logical thing. I don't know why we didn't do it earlier, right? So,
got it.
Yeah.
No? Interesting. From probably, no insights to sort of looking to double down. Going back to Dinesh here, right? Every toy, at least today in metros and tier 1s, I think kids' toys effectively we will relate to fun schools, Mattel, Hasbro toys, or even Lego in that sense. Why even venture into a space where to capture the child's imagination or the parent's imagination, there needs to be significant amount of either a content creation or a value proposition which is differentiated. So how did you venture out to doing something which would have been extremely challenging given how much years of all of us have played with some of these toys which are from the other brands, but today when we enter some of these retail stores where Shifu is present, we are seeing that being a dominant a play for kids or the parents as well. So where did that start, Dinesh? Would love to know a little bit of that early years.
So the early years, we actually started as an education or an tech company and said that we will use augmented reality to solve an education problem. But when we really went around solving that problem, we understood that when people want to solve something around education, they want it completely holistic, or they want at least one full subject to be covered, but augmented reality could not solve that problem effectively. Where we saw that augmented reality did a great job around was solve a small capsule of problem. And then we saw where do we solve capsules of problems is around toys. There could be a toy around as simple as fractions, teaching kids about fractions, or teaching kids about as simple as that animals. So we said that perfect use case, let's try it out. So that's what we did, and we went to multiple malls in Bangalore, we went to multiple apartments out here, multiple the Manyata Tech Parks and all of those, and we set up those stalls that you rent out for 3,000-4,000 or 5,000 bucks a day, and you put out 100 odd products and you show it when people come out for a lunch or a snack or something of that sort. And for the first 3 months on the trot, every time we went, we were sold out. And those were super basic prototypes or basic versions of our products. And then we went with those products to a few retailers and Amazons and of the world. That is where we started getting traction. And that is how we really got started on the journey. And since then, there has been absolutely no looking back.
Got it. Both yourself and I think Prashant as well are in a bucket which I could sort of put it where would have had a normal, a significant change in user behavior during COVID, right? Everyone sleeps, so I'm not worried about sleep solutions being there across the period. But some of these would have seen certain inflection points during COVID, consumption. And in the case of Dinesh, for you, it would have been probably a roller coaster there, because you would have parents who were forced to sort of get these kids in front of smart devices. COVID ended and we are like pushing our kids out and saying no more smart devices, cut down on device time. How do you navigate through those parts? And is this today a journey which is beyond some of these inflection points and consumption? So the question to both of you around the user behaviors and smartphone time spent, which could probably be a driver here as well.
You want to take it first?
Okay. So when we build the product, I'll explain the philosophy that we actually changed while building this product. If you look at a spectrum of users and look at their offline usage patterns, there are people who pray daily, and there are occasional people who engage occasionally. Now, there's a large part of India who does daily check-in into their gods when they start their day. Now, what we realize...
I love this word, daily check-in. It's like, you catching an Indigo flight every morning from the airport or something like that. Okay, go on, sorry.
and their engagement time is dependent on how time rich or how time poor they are. So we picked on that behavior. So this is one need. There were other needs which were lower frequency needs, like me engaging with information around devotion or festivals, tools with respect to consumption and access to services. So we picked the highest frequency use case in the offline world and said, let us create this digital space for people where they could pray digitally. And we don't want people to spend an hour here. What we would want is, as they start their day, depending on how much devotional debt that they have, would someone spend 1 minute? would someone spend 15 minutes to start their day with it, and depending on the need or the trigger, they would engage with more value props that we have given them. So the premise of the platform was more around, I am giving you a space or a tool using which you can pay digitally, get access to information and get access to services whenever required. So using that model, and if you see, right, be it of course pre-COVID, that need was even more done because people were not able to go out to these temples, but what I'm solving for essentially is trying to create this third space where people could go in and connect and get that mental wellness or peace or hope reinforcement that they would need.
Got it. Dinesh, on the same point of...
See, for us, pre-COVID or post-COVID, you cannot keep kids away from the devices anymore. We just saw people talking about parents spending 4, 5, 6 hours on devices. It's almost hypocritical of us to tell our kids that, hey, you cannot spend time on devices. All we can do as parents probably is, or parents actually do, is restrict the device time, A. The other thing they try to do is make sure that the device time is more productive, more meaningful of sorts. And that's where we pitch in, where we come in. And what happened during COVID was, while kids were inside in their homes, and parents had to find a better way of engaging them. So yeah, that was an impetus to us, where people wanted not just smart toys like ours, they wanted any toys that could engage kids meaningfully in a way. So yes, that was an impetus, but still that continues to be relevant today, where kids spend time and parents are okay with them spending productive time and not meaningless time. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Great. Just shifting gears a little bit to Chaitanya on the entire... So I think one comment which from Naveen which sort of stood out for me, which challenged some of the VCs is, probably no entrepreneur would sort of start a full stack model, right? And in your case, probably you ventured out and did full stack or at least vertically integration very early on. Just throw some light on, was that even an option? Could you have worked with other models? Why chose this early on and commit so much, to your own facility to service a category where already legacy guys had built out the value chains?
Again, it was out of necessity,
Okay. Okay.
So we had a clear goal, and the goal was very simple, that we have to service the middle class of India. We had grown up in middle class households. We are very frugal in our thinking. And we said if all of those households are using 1 or 2 salaries to stretch and fulfill everything, education, rental, blah, 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 they also should be able to afford and build a beautiful home. Back then it was mattress, comfortable sleep. Later it became about home. So if that goal had to be fulfilled, you had to provide it at a very low cost and then pass on those savings to the consumer. That's when you make it more affordable. That's when you say that more and more people can afford it. And we never had an interest to service just the top 8 cities, just the affluent. No, today also we run a monthly household income survey. Every quarter we run it. There's 25% people who earn less than 40,000 rupees a month. There's 25% of people who earn more than 2 lakh rupees a month. So this is the people who are value conscious. They're not looking for a cheap product, they're value conscious. So if we had to meet that, the only way we could do was to have access to a manufacturing facility. So we went and met all the big guys. Nobody would give us a meeting. Secondly, we later on learned that it became a blessing in disguise because they didn't have a clue that this was growing. So by not giving us a meeting, they did us a big favor, where we ended up figuring out on our own, setting up small manufacturing units. First it was on a 3rd floor, then it was ground floor, then we took up a slightly larger space. And today we operate 6 factories across all of these. And the reason is, it gives us tremendous control on new product development, gives us tremendous control on new innovations of material sciences, and lastly on cost. So today, if you come to our facilities, you will be amazed to see why we don't have raw wood inventory stacked up. It is because our furniture is designed to be like Lego bricks. So you use the same sideboard, same junctures, same joinery, but it all looks like about 40 different SKUs in the bed frames. Similarly, wardrobes. So it is possible because we had the manufacturing facility. We were not just importing container loads. Similarly, on mattresses, the flagship orthopedic product is today on its 20th version because India has no standards. There's no ISI, BIS, no standard. So if you want to innovate, it's up to you.
Got it.
So we had to do that, and that became a sort of our calling card. And because of this full stack, today when I say full stack, I don't mean just factory. It's R&D, design, prototyping, engineering, production, delivery, installation with our own carpenters. We are probably a larger carpenter employer than urban company.
Okay.
So
Interesting
that's
fact.
we had to do the whole 9 yards in order
Understood.
to be able to service that.
Yeah, if I may, actually not doing full stack is not an option in India, right? If you want to succeed. India is not about discovery, right? And you will see that in, experiences that we all have in, instances in marketplaces, the complaints that you get, or even in the, the ride hailing apps, where the service provider can actually choose to cancel, right? And all of us would have faced it in Bangalore, right? And so unless you control the experience, customer experience, you cannot deliver a consumer experience. And that can lead to problems for the company in terms of scaling. So you have to do full stack. So just to give an example again from Lenskart, where Sudhi spoke about their factory, right? They built a factory which has a capacity today to produce 125,000 specs a day, right? That will be the largest, single roof in eyewear. And we are now talking about saying that can we deliver next day, right? In specs, in your own city, you may not get next day, except very special high premium offering where there can be instant delivery. And by the way, now in Mumbai airport, in T2, you will actually get instant delivery. That means you can go in, place an order, and then before you board the flight, either in the food court or in the boarding gate, you will get the specs delivered within 30 minutes, right? Those things are not possible if you relied on third party,
Got it.
right? So, and customer experience is important.
I'm sure if it's possible in Mumbai airport, it's possible in Bangalore streets, where we'll get caught in for a couple of hours on the road as
Yeah,
well.
silk board you can get delivered.
No, but TCM,
Anup,
just
a
going.
small
Go ahead.
Small
Go ahead.
addendum to what TCM said. It also depends on the industry. For example, if you look at beauty and personal care, there is probably not much value to be extracted by setting your own manufacturing, because the Unilevers and the P&Gs of the world have built a manufacturing ecosystem over 30 years. You can definitely innovate on R&D. You can definitely innovate on your formulation, patent, and
Exactly.
so forth. And apparel
Got it.
and textiles, you are not going to get any value by setting up a textile mill.
Got it.
But
Yep.
like Lenskart, for our category, there was absolute necessity, and it is life changing.
Understood. Probably to TCM, and then we'll come back here, is consumer tech is known to be capital intensive. And now we're talking about full stack, we're talking about costs on the customer acquisition side. Are today's investors, especially given the last 18 months of change in even our own investor mindset, how do we look at founders, and what would an investor look for backing and making some of these businesses more self-sustaining, right? How do we gauge whether an opportunity is self-sustaining and back those kind of entrepreneurs? Any insights from your how you look at it?
See, my experience is that, capital intensive, not even Navin made a statement saying that, you talk about consumer tech, but are you a manufacturing investor? Absolutely, they are both going hand in hand. It is not a manufacturing business. You see the amount of technology that they might have used is substantially different from, let's say, some of their competitors who are in the same business, right? Or the way, Lenskart, in every experience, or first try in every experience, that they use technology as a differentiator or a distributor, disruptor. I think that is where the difference comes in. So to go back, I think it is, while like everyone said, it is capital intensive, but it's a question of what are you playing for, right? So what at least has worked is somebody who has had an obsession to solve a problem to the perfection, right? Those who are setting new goals for themselves. Today, in fact, recently we were discussing in one of the companies, NPS is 70 plus. Okay, to get NPS of 70 plus is just impossible, right? That means your, promoters are more than 80, 84, 85, right? And then detractors are in single digit. And that is not easy to achieve. And that entrepreneur is not even happy with that number. He says that I want to take it to 80, right? Which possibly only Apple gets today, right? That is something that obsession to solve, and then go deep into consumer insights. Listen to the consumer, right? There are companies which have implemented saying that irrespective of the level, irrespective of what you do inside the company, you have to face the consumer at least one day a week or one day a month. That gives insight to everyone in the value chain inside the company. Those are very important.
Yeah, no, got it. Just to stay on this point, and probably the last time I touch upon this, but I think, Dinesh, your sector in toys has now some set of regulatory tailwinds which are sort of helping a toy manufacturer from India build out. Would you like to throw some light on how some of these spaces in consumer, which ideally may not have happened, is also seeing a little bit of this vocal for local, building in India kind of story coming out? How is that sort of shaping up for you as an opportunity?
I think in a big manner actually. So I'm not pretty sure if we are all aware, but the government of India came up with two major macroeconomic policy changes. One is they jacked up the import duties on toys from 20% to almost 70% now, and they introduced BIS norms where every toy being sold in the country needs to have BIS certification, and an inspector from India needs to travel to your factory, certify the factory and the product both. What that means is, of course, we all know 80% of the toys were imported from China. There was an instant plug on all of those imports, creating a huge vacuum in the country. And the government was so sharp that they did that for Vietnam as well, because they knew that Vietnam is actually getting a lot of Chinese imports only, Chinese investments only. And in India's bid to create India as a second, or as a part of the China plus one strategy that everyone has, that China is currently say 80-90%, I want China plus one, I want to go 70 plus 30, say, and that plus one, India wanted to be that plus one for toys. They did that. Of course, it's great for brands like us who make in India, and by the way, make in India for us happened not because of this, happened due to COVID, where we were growing and there were these geopolitical questions that we had many consumers from US were asking, is this product made in China? And we had to answer that question, and we thought that, hey, as we grow, do we want to set up a manufacturing unit in India, a supply unit in India? We said that, let's do that. While we started that, none of this was in action by the government.
Understood.
So we started then, and we have been super beneficiaries of these moves. And had we started later, it would have been, we would have been an year behind where we are today. So yeah, I think big for us and big for the overall. So India government has actually stayed really true, not just from a policy, but from an execution standpoint also on this one.
Understood. Got it. No, very interesting how the government played a role here and the continued impetus. Prashant, then probably a question to all three, probably can start off in the same sequence. Especially in your case, this entire myth that this religion, spirituality, borderline, not scientific beliefs in that sense, is a sort of a tier 2, tier 3 situation. Metro tier 1 guys, we all don't pray, right? We all don't care. We will, in that sense, kind of a sort of a feeling of a divide of where this use case is most relevant. So, common question on Metro Tier 1 versus Tier 2, Tier 3 in each of your segments, but specifically to Prashant to address this myth about where is this customer base of whatever 3 million odd MAUs, where are this resting today?
I think it's a myth, first of all. I think when we are looking at India from a Kormangala, Indiranagar or HSR lens, it looks like that. I think there are 2 million people who are in India who are heavily assured and insured in their lives, who don't need hope. I think faith as a practice or belief system is needed in the lives of people who don't have these assurances and insurances, where there is a constant reinforcement of hope as they move forward in their lives. Now when just to give you the data, of all the transacting users that we have, 13% of them have an Academy, Physics Wala, some of these apps installed on their phones. So what does that tell you? A student studying in Kota before, and I'll tell you how do we, let's say, monetize, for example, one example. So what we realized was the engagement platform was working well for information and accesses and praying as a space. People wanted more access, and what was that access? We have this behavior where, let's say, my mom is or someone is a believer of, let's say, Ma Mansa Devi Mandir in Haridwar, and I would go there twice in my lifetime. But at every important occasion, I would keep some money out, which I would hand out to a relative once he travels there and says, can you offer this chunri or a piece of cloth when you go there? What she doesn't get back is a proof. Whereas if you look at her keeping out money phenomena, she would do it either on a weekly frequency or on an occasion and so on. What we did was we bridged that gap. We said, can we partner with the priest there who can give you this daily blessing through a video where he shoots in that particular shrine, takes your name, blesses your family and so on. Now 30% of my transacting users are people who are small and medium business owners. And if you look at it, right, they would spend 50 rupees every single day to offer that 50 rupees ka flower basket in their work shrine. And why do they do that? It's a daily blessing marker in their life where they say, hey, I'm starting my day, take care of me. And if you look at it, right, I'm coming to the bigger question where we say, hey, is religion or faith that dangerous? When you look at it from a political lens, yes, there is a lot of demonization of this that has happened, but if you look at people who practice it, it's very harmless practice where it gives them this ability to keep moving forward in their lives. On our platform, we are not a UGC platform, so hence in that case there is no nuisance value to it. So just to put this particular thing out, right, there are people, when it comes to faith, minus of the first 2 million people who are occasional spenders. Occasional spender, anyone in this particular room would be doing a Lakshmi Puja on Diwali, because we have a transactional relationship with the Supreme. You might not be believing in it, but your society or your parents will force you to do that one transaction or 2 transactions a year. Whereas as you move this way, again, that it is a many times a year sort of use case for people. So when we look at it, devotion, our services are being consumed mostly by people who are time poor and money rich. There are people whom you will call as blue collared workers who are, so devotion doesn't come in shape and form, it's a belief.
Understood. Now, I do need to do a plug in here with respect to, so today, sorry, I follow Rajinikanth quite a lot. For me, Rajini is God. So you give me any opportunity to, do some abeyance to him or something, I would do it. But again, not to trivialize the fact that, spirituality and religion is core to many of us as we grow up. But quickly, to just do a quick turn to Chaitanya and then to Dinesh on this tier 1, tier 2 phenomenon, please.
Sure. Initially when we started, it was pretty much 80-90% in the top 8 cities. But today we have about 45 to 50% revenue from the tier 1 cities and the remaining 50% from tier 2.
Interesting.
So there is a huge demand, so much so that in the cities where we don't service in furniture, mattress we service everywhere, pan-India, but in furniture where we don't service, resellers have sort of sprung up where they get about 5-10 families together, place the order, some reseller in the city takes the responsibility of the truck, installation, everything, and they just buy from us. We figured it out through a circuitous route, but there is demand where we will have to grow to service this.
Got it. Dinesh, quickly on your side.
I think quite similar to their experience also. When we started, it was more of the metros and the tier 1s where we had traction. But what we realized is that this 10-20 million of people who had that ability to buy, ability to spend, they exist in a Bhopal, they exist in a smaller city as well, but in smaller population. So, for example, if you want to go there, you have to be at the top 2 or 3 toy stores in that city. Of course, in a Bangalore or a Mumbai, you would find 20 such top stores, 20-30 such stores. But in a city like that, you will find 2 such stores. But you want to be there. So, we do see 60 to 70% today coming from the big ones, balance coming from the small. So because that's been our focus. But yes, there is huge opportunity there, and depending upon where you're playing, you want to be there, absolutely.
Understood. Just opening it up for questions. I know we are short of time and hence I'm cutting short, but it's yeah, please go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
So, hi Prashant. So I just did a Prashant shutout to experience the whole transactional flow and the proof concept. It was very good. So I just wanted to understand any unique insight. I don't have a very specific pinpoint question. Unique insight in the tier 2, tier 3 city, which people can look upon to build, right? So yeah, open-ended, very open-ended question. Sorry for that, but because a lot of the founders which are there mostly,
Probably even from your trail days, in case there's something coming out, tier 2, tier 3.
Yeah, sure. So, the framework I followed was I looked at a user and looked at their offline behaviors, and I looked at mapping those offline behaviors with respect to existing digital platforms. My bigger learning from my previous startup was this: when you go about building a new behavior, it takes a lot more capital, it takes a lot more time, and it needs a lot more training for you to condition the user to use the platform in certain way. So if you are able to figure out a behavior which is high frequency and doesn't really have a parallel in the offline world, it's worth chasing, I would say. So why high frequency? Because if you are building an app business around it, low frequency apps get uninstalled. And in India, we heard about the problems with respect to CAC and LTVs and a lot of that. So I would say look at our offline behavior, try to find patterns in the offline world and see if they would not be served online and see if there's something there.
And how did you decide if they will be willing to pay?
So these are two journeys, I would say. So I pretty much like what Chaitanya said, right? You have to keep moving. So for me, the bigger challenge was how do you build a platform which people will trust? So that was the first part of the journey. A platform which people will absolutely adore. So that's the first part. We took a choice where we said we'll not run ads, because ads is bringing you out of that particular space in which you would want to go in and pray and meditate. So we said no to ads. Then we had to look at what are the engagement loops and what is that need which will fall in line with that engagement loop which needs to be served. For the whole Chiratae thing, for example, is an extension of daily praying or a weekly praying behavior. And of course, right, you have to talk to the user. So one thing, our biggest value as a company, number one, is user obsession. I think what we people do is talk to the users to understand their needs. And this whole idea came from many users who said, hey, now you have these many users now, why don't you give us access to these temples? And we kept on asking them, what do you need? What do you need? And the service evolved over the last 1 year. The first version was where we did not used to take names of the user. And the NPS was roughly 30, 40. But then people said we would want to hear their name, our names where the Chiratae is being offered. And when we included that, it led to shoot up of the NPS and so on. So it was an iterative process, I would say. And because there is no parallel in the US or China that we can copy from, you have to go and do a very first principle deep dive into a user behavior. Makes the journey harder, but it's a good journey, I would say.
Thank you, Prashant. Amazing UI, by the way. Amazing.
Probably one question, that's it. Yeah, Anand.
Hey, so my name is Anand. We are founders of a platform called AllDRX. Question is this: let's say in your specific business. Hi. Question is to three of you all. Okay, I think I can be loud enough. The question is for the three of you all. Let's say in your specific businesses, say scale, if it's defined as 1 to 100, 100 being the highest, one being the lowest, the effort, reward, money that you need to achieve 100 is obviously the highest, Standing today, are you working towards, what number are you working towards? Are you working towards 100? Are you working towards 30? So if you can, all three of you can say, what is the input required to reach that number is very different, right? Whether you want to reach 30 or 100 is very different. So what numbers are you all in your life trying to reach? And as capital providers, Team Chiratae, how would you react if somebody is not working towards 100?
Your 100 is from a scale of the company or the capital?
In your own definition, in your mind, business scale that you can possibly achieve is, let's say, 100. Are you working towards 100, 50?
short-term milestone or a long-term? I don't know. You can read that question in multiple ways, but just doing a quick round of this.
I don't know if there's any entrepreneur that will be chasing less than 150. I think that's by definition we are wired like that. So at least
I think kind of, yeah, agree, absolutely. I mean, you want to chase 1,000, absolutely, but you want to take it one day at a time, at least. You want to say, make sure that, like the previous panel also mentioned, that you don't want to die doing that. So it's more important to be at a 40 and not die than to be at 100 and die. So it's of course taking one day at a time. It's super important. Of course, that vision not only drives you, but drives your team on a daily basis. And that drives obsession within the team also, that, hey, we're going to be there one day. But it's a mix of both,
it's
absolutely.
that joke which says, how do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a time.
So there is a bank called Wells Fargo. You all have heard, right? Wells Fargo has been there for 200 years. They didn't have a branch in New York. Wells Fargo, which is the largest bank, did not have a branch in New York until 10 years back. So somehow we all get lost with this thing saying that we have to be the biggest, we have to be the biggest and the largest. It's one thing to sing to the world, where everybody likes a very aspirational, yeah, we all know that, right? I mean, what we need to sing to the world. But really, intrinsically, I mean, what is wrong with building for 50? And getting there.
So there's nothing wrong. What happens is, if you are a small institution, you're building an institution. You're building, first of all, every decision you take, you want to build for the next decade. You don't want to build for tomorrow. So if you're a small or a mid-sized institution, the reality is that you may die sooner. If you are a bigger institution, the reality is that, or the probability that you may sustain for 100 years is much higher. Of course, the VCs are in for less than 10 years. That's a reality. But you are building for the absolute long term, and
Probably TCM, I think you should take this as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
In terms of what kind of an entrepreneur would you like to back?
See, we are venture capitalists, right? So for us, somebody needs to build for venture outcome. So if an entrepreneur thinks in a suboptimal way, saying that, look, I want to survive and I want to be there, but it's going to be a smaller outcome. It can be smaller outcome due to various reasons. Somebody may build for the top 1% of India, or somebody may say that I want to be the best and the biggest, right? You cannot build the biggest company and the most valuable company in India by servicing only the top 1% of India, who anyway can afford everything in the world at the global prices. Unless you solve for the massive middle class, you are not going to be solving for it, right? So people who think in a suboptimal way will build a profitable company but not create a venture outcome. That will be a lifestyle business. And there's nothing wrong about it, but capitalists will not follow, right? That is where the difference will come. Because this is the top 2 or 3 in any category will get 90 to 95% of the market cap created in that category. And out of that, it will be very stark. Number 1 will get 70%, number 2 will get 20%, number 3 will get 5%. All the balance, even if there are 1,000 companies, will get total of 5%, right? So we play for venture outcome. Unless an entrepreneur is willing to play for that, creating that type of an enterprise, they should not go to venture capitalists.
Great. On that note, I think it's time that we allow you also to chill and relax. I think we've been holding you onto your seats for long. Thanks a lot to the panelists for joining me here for this engaging conversation.